Hi, everyone. Welcome to our singer class today with Michaels. We're so excited to be back and doing another fun class with you all. My name is Bethany. I'll introduce myself real quick. I am an education support specialist with Singer Sewing Company. And behind the scenes today, I have two people helping me, two of my colleagues, Amy and Amy. Amy Mulroney is here with me in the studio today, helping answer any questions related to the machine that we're using and how to get this machine or anything else through Michaels. And then Amy McMullen is helping with answering any sewing and Serger related questions as we're working through this demonstration today. But if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. They'll be happy to answer. So look for both of the Amy's. And if there's something that I need to repeat, they'll definitely let me know, or a question that I need to answer on camera, I can definitely help with that as well. So they'll let me know that. I'll check in with them. But quickly, as we all get settled and get ready for our class, if you could let us know in the chat box where you're watching from. And then if you have a Serger sewing machine already, let us know maybe which Serger you have. Maybe it's the Singer Pro Finish that we're going to be sewing with today, or maybe it's a different Singer model. But we would love to know which model that you have or which Serger you have. And, have you used it? Is it still sitting in the box? Are you comfortable with it? Have you just done the basics and you're wanting to learn what all a Serger can do? We want to know kind of what your comfort level is with a Serger. If you don't have one yet and you're here just to watch and learn and see if this might be a machine that you would like to add to your sewing room, this is definitely a great class for you. This is just an introduction to serging. We're going to be focusing on the Singer Pro Finish, which is available through Michaels Craft Stores and michaels.com. But serging is serging. We want to show you what all a serger can do, and we're going to kind of go over all of those details. So we have a lot to show you. Today's class is not a sew along project-based class like all of our previous classes have been. This is truly a demonstration class, and the reason we wanted to do that is we have not introduced a serger machine to this audience through this platform with Michaels yet. So we wanted to introduce this to you first, and then in 2 weeks we're going to come back and use this machine again to actually make a project together. So we thought it would be good to give you the basics and give you some of the techniques, and what we learned today we can apply in 2 weeks to the next class, which is December 15th at noon Central Standard Time. So be sure after this class you go back to Michael's website and you sign up for the next class in 2 weeks. At the end of this class, I'll show you what we're going to be making, and I think you'll be really excited about it. It's like a perfect little holiday quick project. So, all right, do we have any people logging in that are excited to learn about serging?
Yes, we have some folks that do have one that haven't used it.
Okay.
We have folks that are just getting a brush up, and then we have some folks that don't have one and haven't ever used one.
Okay, so we've kind of got the spectrum. Yeah. Okay, I know that some people can be intimidated by a serger machine. They are different and look different than a regular sewing machine, but just like any machine, it just takes a little time to learn something new. So that's why we thought it'd be very beneficial to teach you all some of the basics. I have them facing me. I have two here because we have two different settings, and it was just kind of easier for time's sake to have two set up. You really only need one serger though. But I'm going to go over kind of the parts and pieces. There's some familiar terminology I'll use if you're familiar with sewing on a regular sewing machine. And then there's some new terminology we're going to learn today. So I think this is going to be helpful to get used to those new parts and words and be able to understand how this works a little differently than a sewing machine. So a serger essentially is creating a seam, and I'm going to show you here, and I'll do some up close cameras in a minute, but this is a piece of fabric that I serged, and for today's demonstration I am using different color threads, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but not just for the machine, but just so you can see it on camera. But when you serge a seam, it's going to finish it completely. That's what's so nice about a serger. It's creating a finished professional seam. It's not going to fray, and it's really strong. And on a stretch fabric, it has really good stretch, better than a stretch stitch on a regular sewing machine. When you open your seam, it's nice and clean, and it is strong. So this is great for garment wear. So if you like to sew garments, or you're interested in sewing garments and you want to have a nice strong garment that's going to hold up to wear and wash, a serger and doing serged seams on your garments is critical. So back here, you can see some pieces that I brought that I have made. The clothing is some pieces I've made over the summer, obviously, because they all have kind of a summery vibe. I'm kind of craving some warmer weather. It's warmer here today, so I felt like breaking out some of the summer clothes. But what's nice about a serger is it can sew lots of different types of fabric. So I'm going to kind of walk you through some of these pieces just to kind of talk you through that. This dress right here that I made is made with a double brush poly. If you know those leggings that are like super soft and buttery and stretchy, and they just feel so good when you put them on, that's what this fabric feels like. So I made this little stretchy dress. It's a 4-way stretch. So this fabric stretches this way, and it's very stretchy. I made pockets. There's a little casing for elastic. I did a nice collar on it and everything. It's got like a little slit up one side to make it more flowy. This fabric can typically be a little challenging to sew, especially on a regular sewing machine, but it sews beautifully on a serger just by adjusting some of the settings. And we'll go over that, but it sewed this super stretchy fabric with ease. So it all lays really nice and I don't have puckering. The other 2 tank tops hanging up there are a cotton knit. So they do have some stretch, but definitely not as stretchy as the double brush poly. And you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see in the camera here, my back panel on this tank top, because it has the scoop in the lower back. It's 2 separate pieces. So I serged those together. Then I serged my side seams together, and it just does it all at once. It finishes my seam, it sews it together, it secures it, it has a nice stretch with the fabric. And it's so much faster than having to do multiple steps on a sewing machine. The other little shawl over here is like a kind of a silkier fabric, very flowy, very light, just like a cover wrap. And I sewed those pieces together with the serger. So it can do some really soft, slippery, delicate fabric and some very stretchy fabric. You can also do heavy fabrics. I hemmed a pair of jeans for my dad on a serger because I wanted to have a nice clean hem that was nice and strong seam because I knew it would be rubbing up against his shoes. And I didn't want it to fray and come apart. So again, you can do a lot of really good sewing and fast sewing with so many different types of fabric on a serger. You can also do some decorative stitches on a serger. And we're going to talk about one of them today called a rolled hem. And I brought a couple examples. We'll show those up close when we get to that point. But sewing on a serger isn't just about the construction of a garment or construction of a project. It's also can be some decorative sewing as well. And we'll dive into that a little bit later in the class. I don't want to overwhelm you all too much right from the get-go. All right, so on this machine, before we zoom in close, I want you to see from the back side here, and I'll kind of, sorry. These machines have suction cups on the bottom, so it makes it hard to kind of pick it up from the table, but you can turn it. But that's because you'll see when we start to sew, there's 4 threads feeding through this machine. So there's a lot of moving parts and they're very sturdy machines, but those suction cups help it stay secure to your tabletop so it doesn't move around while you're serging. So with this machine and all serger machines, they do come with the different color threads, and you'll see when we get to the front that they match the tension disc and the guide to feed them through the machine. It will come with these threads already threaded. So your machine does come out of the box ready to go if you get a Singer, especially this Pro Finish. So that's really nice. It does have the tower. It does collapse down for storing and pops back up. We have where our threads enter right here along the back, and then they feed into the front of the machine. But I just wanted to show you all the back real quick and those threads, because from the front you won't be able to see them. All right, do we have any questions so far? We're good. We're ready to move to the machine. Okay, I'm going to show you all the machine. Raina, if we can move to the second camera. Perfect. Okay. I know that sounds squeaky, but it's just those suction cups underneath. So this is the front of our machine here. There's a lot that I want to show you, but some of the things that are going to be similar to a regular sewing machine is our presser foot lift is in the back. Okay. Sometimes on some model machines, they'll be on this right side with a lever. It just kind of depends, but all of our Singer ones are on the back here. Over here on this right side, let me turn this a little more. Sorry, I have a very clean table. Right here is our stitch length. So this machine goes all the way up to 4 and goes all the way down to what says F, but F would be like a very tight stitch. Here's our hand wheel. Just like a sewing machine, you want to crank that towards you, never crank it away from you. And then right here on this side, and I'm going to try to turn this a little more, is our differential feed. This is something new that is to the Serger machine. A differential feed is what's going to help with eliminating stretching and puckering on your seams, especially on those very stretchy fabrics, those knits, that double brush poly dress that I made. You definitely have to adjust this differential feed based on the fabric that you're using. So we'll talk more about that. Also on this side is your power switch and where your power cord plugs into. So that's kind of everything on this side. All right. Oh, that noise. Sorry, guys. All right. So across the top here is your tension disc. And you see they're each color coded. So we have blue, green, red, and yellow. What these are, these first two are going to be your needle threads. So your left needle and your right needle. And then these two are your upper looper and lower looper. And those are down in here. I'm going to open this by sliding and opening here. Now, don't get intimidated. This is where people start to get intimidated by a serger. But don't get intimidated. These newer machines have a lovely diagram that's color coded. Everything's got markings with red dots and yellow dots of where everything goes. Okay. So threading them really isn't that hard once you do it a couple of times, and it does come threaded. So take some pictures before you unthread it if you need to reference what it looked like before. But you'll see that your threads are going to come down through these tension discs, and you want to make sure they're really in there good. Okay. If they're not, it's not going to sew right. So you're going to bring those down and follow the dotted line all the way through and thread it. One thing that I'm going to zoom in on, because this applies to every serger. Okay. And I'm going to turn my hand wheel here just a little bit so you can see. See these moving parts here? So this is actually my upper looper. This is my red thread. This is my upper looper. And this coming out right here, that one right here, is my lower looper, that yellow thread. So the holes, it goes through, the yellow goes through that hole. But what I want to point out is this yellow thread goes up and over the upper looper. That is going to be the same on every serger. You want that lower looper thread, if you thread it through, to go up and over the upper looper. And then they're going to go out from under your foot. Okay. I just wanted to point that out. That's something that is very critical when setting up a machine. When serging, the threading of the machine is really critical in having success with your stitching. Okay. I'm not going to walk through every step of threading this one because they all thread a little differently. So unless you have this one, it really isn't going to be beneficial to most, but like I said, it's all diagrammed right here for you. And when you get this machine, it does come pre-threaded with these different colors. So when you start stitching, if you see a thread that seems out of place, because they're all different colors, it lets you know which one you need to adjust. So when you first get this machine, don't cut them all off and change them all to white, because then you're going to really struggle figuring out which one you need to adjust to get it all set up like you like it. And then when you're ready to switch out the threads, you can, once you've got your settings in place. One other thing I want to point out right here is I'm going to do it carefully. It's spring loaded. This is the blade that will cut our thread as we sew it. And I'll show you that up close when we get to sewing in just a minute. But that is something that you can move up out of the way if you need to when threading. It does help a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to close this back. Now, before I do, when you start sewing with a serger, there will get threads and dust and everything down in here. But with all of these moving parts, it's really important to keep this area clean. Do not get a can of compressed air and blow it out, because what you're going to end up doing is pushing that back into the machine and into the motor, and you'll never be able to get it out. And that will continue to build up over time, and you will start to have issues. This doesn't just apply to a serger. This applies to a sewing machine. Do not use this compressed air cans. You want to get, they make these little attachments for your home vacuum, where you can just get a little mini vacuum and just carefully clean it out. There's little brushes that you can get to get some of that dust out and suck the air, suck the dirt out. Don't blow it into the machine. Okay. A lot of people make that mistake. It's just quick and easy, but it can cause issues over a long period of time. Okay. Something else I want to show you on this machine is we do have a little compartment over here. So we have a free arm here, right here, which is nice. So if you want to do a cuff or a neckband or a pant leg, if you're hemming something, you can slide it right on and sew around a smaller area, which is really nice. And inside here, we do have a storage compartment. And this machine does come with some tweezers, which is extremely helpful when threading the machine. Some little pliers, screwdriver. This screwdriver is the right size for these little screws for your needles. So if you need it when you're ready to change them, or if you want to take one out and just sew with one needle, you can. So there's a screwdriver, and then it does come with 2 extra serger needles. And just like a sewing machine, you do want to change your serger needles every 6 to 8 hours of sewing. Okay, let me pop this back on here. Any questions? Okay, what do we got?
One, we dropped a link in for this machine specifically on threading. Just some,
Okay, great. So Amy said that she did have a link for how to thread this specific machine, and she dropped that in the chat.
And then they were asking about if it mattered what order you went in, and Amy has answered that. But if you
Okay,
can address
yes.
that.
It does matter which order you thread the machine in, and I'm so glad you asked that. Right here on this diagram, sorry, we're just gonna squeak a little more. There we go. So right here on this diagram, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Each sewing or each serger machine does sometimes can have a different threading order, but typically you start from the inside and work your way out. So you start here and work your way out. You start with your your upper looper. So this would be 1. Then you do your lower looper, and then you do your right needle, and then your left needle. And it has them numbered right down here, which one is which. But if you need to put a little sticker there that says 1, 2, 3, 4, or upper, lower, right, left, do that until you get comfortable with it. But threading your machine in that order is very critical. If you have an issue with one of the threads, like earlier today, I was doing some testing on them for preparation for today's class, and my lower looper thread broke. And I'm like, what happened to my lower looper thread? I'm sewing and it's not there, and it had broken down in here. So I actually had to take them all out and rethread it because I have to thread it in the right order. And it does make a difference. So that's why learning to thread your machine is very important. Take the time to just sit down and practice it. It's very helpful because you will have a time where a thread will break and you will need to be able to fix it, okay? But yeah, this little diagram right here will tell you what order. Some machines sew thread left to right, but most of them do the upper and lower first and then your needles, okay? Does that help answer that question? Okay, perfect. I think we're kind of ready to dive into some different types of stitches that this machine can do. So I have a little demonstration pack over here of fabrics that we're gonna just run through just to show you all quickly some of the things. Now remember, these are just some techniques that we're gonna do in preparation for our class in a couple weeks. So I'm excited. So the first thing and the most common stitch on a serger is a 4-thread overlock, okay? That is what I did earlier, and that's what I'm gonna show you right now. Get that in there. So this is what we're gonna do right now. This is the most common stitch on a serger, and see how strong that is. It's not coming apart, okay? So what I did is I just folded this piece of fabric. This is a light woven fabric. Now my foot is already down, and I pretty much leave my foot down on my serger. You don't have to lift it every time like a sewing machine because it lifts in the front right here. It's a little spring loaded, and you want to leave it down and just lift this front part because you'll find that there's some resistance here. It's pretty heavy, and it's going to help hold your fabric in place. And my needles are up and we're ready to go. So I'm going to stick it right here. You got a question?
Needles real quick, and why we need to change them.
Why we need to change our needles every 6 days. So our needles are going to wear down, and we want to have that nice sharp point. So I took one out of the other machine earlier. I hope you guys can see this, but it's got a nice sharp point. This is a new needle. Having a fresh needle is going to make sewing through your fabric so much easier and seamless. These do wear down over time. And 6 to 8 hours of actual sewing on a machine is actually quite a long time. So you'll notice when you have been sewing on a machine for a while and you change your needles, just how much easier it is. It's not catching. Sometimes with needles, you can feel a rough spot or something, and that's a sign that it's time to change it out. There's a flat side to the needle, and that goes and a round side, and that flat side goes to the back when you put them in. And that's on the serger and on a sewing machine, okay? And there's just different ones for different machines and different types of sewing. So there's a lot of different needles out there, but these are specifically for serging, and you'll see that we have 2 in right now for this one. I'm gonna zoom in while I sew this. Okay.
And maybe talk about.
Okay. So the other question was about thread. So when it comes to thread for a serger, you definitely want to get thread that is specific for sergers. A lot of times they come on these larger spools like this. But you can use some decorative threads, and I brought a few to show you. I was kind of going to show this later, but we'll talk about it right now. So this is a lightly spun thread that has like this kind of fuzzy. Your camera's not blurry. It really is a fuzzy kind of thread. It's not spun as tight. So it creates a fun texture to your project. And I'll show you, I have a sample of what that looks like. So that is that fuzzy thread right through here. And this is a technique on a serger called flat locking. We're not going to do this one today. We'll show it to you in 2 weeks when our next class. But I wanted to show that you can do some decorative threads in here. But the key to doing decorative threads on a serger is those decorative threads need to be in your upper or lower looper, and you need to have regular serger thread in your needle positions. So just the decorative threads are going to go through the loopers. Here's another one that I did with that same flat locking, where you can see this pretty blue glitter. It's like almost like a cording go through. And on the back side, it just looks like that. So this is just one of the other fun things that you can do with a serger. This one is actually, I don't know if you can see in this video, this yellow thread is actually fades from like light yellow to dark yellow. I have another thread similar to that same concept that's darker with rainbow. But if you put a thread like this in, it will fade as you sew and change colors, which is kind of fun. And again, I did that flat locking, so you can have this fun decorative stitch, and then it's nice and flat on the back. So we'll be showing some examples of this and doing this on camera in 2 weeks. But that's, yes, you can use decorative threads, but they need to be in the upper and lower loopers, not in your needle positions, okay? And for serger threads, there's a lot of different ones, but you can get them in a lot of different colors. Most people, when they're serging, they'll have all of the threads be the same. Especially for garment sewing, I typically use like white, black, a gray, depending on what I'm sewing, because most of what I'm serging is going to be on the inside of my garment anyways. Does that help answer that? Okay.
So just one more thing, just for clarity, do you thread with the foot up or down? You
thread with the foot down. Okay, great question. All great questions. Keep those questions coming. I appreciate you asking those. I want to make sure you guys feel prepared to be able to use your serger in the next 2 weeks when we do our class project together. Okay, so like I said, we folded our fabric in half. We've got our lifted our foot and just slid it right in there just a little bit. And when you first start sewing on your serger, if you haven't sewn on it yet and you just threaded it or you just pulled it out of the box, you want to take that hand wheel and turn it towards you and make sure that everything is moving smoothly before you hit your the foot control on the floor, okay? You see how I kept sewing? You want to create a little bit of a tail and just trim it with your scissors, okay? You want to leave a tail so things don't come unthreaded or get tangled. But this is what we just sewed. And you can see the different colors so we can see where things are. This looks perfect. This is exactly how you want it to look. and we've got a nice strong seam. And then we've got a little bit that came off. This is what our blade cut off as we were sewing that seam. So as we sewed down here, it cut this little bit off, okay, with that blade. I'll zoom out and do the next one where you can see it trimming. But our settings for our 4-thread overlock are going to be a 3 tension all the way across. All of these are set to 3. My stitch length is at 3, and my differential feed is at 1. That's in the middle. Some machines say N for neutral. Most of our singers say 1. So that is kind of that middle zone for the perfect stitch right through there. Just a standard 4-thread overlock, okay? It makes it super easy to be able to stitch and finish. So normally on a sewing machine, you would stitch across and then you would do another stitch across to finish your seam with an overlock stitch. You don't have to do that. This is all in one step. It's so much faster, okay? So our next example I'm going to show you real quick is we're going to kind of do a demonstration that pretends like we're putting like a collar or a cuff onto a sweatshirt. So this is a fabric that's kind of sweatshirt material. It's really soft and fuzzy on the inside. It's got stretch one way, but a little bit the other way. And then we're going to put this little cuff on it as if it's a collar. And this is super stretchy, okay? And for my demonstration, I'm just going to show you real quick. I'm going to fold this and cut out a little collar shape. My little scissors here. Should have grabbed some fabric ones. Okay. So we have our little collar. You guys see that? It's not the perfect one, but you get the idea. And we want to attach this little trim around here like a collar. But this stretches a lot more than this, and this is smaller than this. And we need to sew this in a straight line, but it's a curve because our serger sews in a straight line. So in order to do that, I'm folding this piece in half and I'm putting my open raw edges together here. And I'm going to place it under the foot. Same settings as before. We're using that same 4-thread overlock. And I'm just going to get it started. Okay. And now my needles are down. I'm going to stretch this and straighten it out. And as I stretch it, I'm going to stretch my blue fabric as well. And I'm going to stretch as I go. I'm going to sew a little and then stretch and make sure that they're lined up in a straight line along this edge, okay? And then we're going to stretch and stretch. What I'm doing is I'm showing you how easy it is to create a nice cuff or collar with a finished seam that's really strong, that's going to stretch with it. All right, so here is our seam, really nice seam. And when we fold it up, there's our collar piece or our cuff. It could be a sleeve cuff, but it's got the stretch still, because this stitch is going to stretch with your fabric, but hold it in place and be nice and strong. So how easy and look how nice and finished that looks. So I have an example here. This is actually a baby bib that's made with washcloths that was embroidered. And it was done with the same method of going around a circle, but in order to create a circle on a serger, you have to straighten out your seam and make it and stretch it with it. So how easy is that to just cut those and serge them together and then put your collar piece in? And then it will just stretch and fit right over the little kid's head and you have a little bib. Super cute, right? So I'm trying to show you some examples as we go of how you can take what I just showed you and apply it to a project. We doing good with questions? I love this example. All right, so while we're on this piece, I'm also going to show you real quick on how to do a quick casing for elastic or for a drawstring, for a waistband on some sweatpants or for a hoodie. So I'm going to fold my fabric up and I'm going to fold it back down. And we are going to serge along this edge. And you'll see how we quickly in one swoop, one quick little stitch through, we can create a simple casing to run elastic, and I've got it folded over 3 times, and it's a thicker fabric and it's sewing through it just fine. It's cutting off my little scraps here. Trim my tail, there's my stitching, and there's my casing. So I have a little casing where I can put elastic, and you could put your elastic or your cording all the way through there before you do your casing. Just make sure you don't sew and cut off your elastic or cording that you're going to run through there for your drawstring. But how easy is that? All in one swoop. So see how fast these projects can go with a serger. It's all about making things easier and simpler. All right. So remember how earlier I talked about differential feed? That is this little knob over here. It goes from 0.7 all the way to 2 on this machine. Some go to 0.5 to 2, 1 being kind of in the middle. So that's kind of like our neutral zone. But I want to show you how the differential feed can really affect the stitch on a stretchy knit fabric. So see how stretchy? It's like almost like a cable knit. It's really soft, really pretty. Something I would definitely want to wear like a sweater made out of, or a cardigan. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna stick my fabric right here for just a second. We're gonna leave our tensions at 3, and we're gonna leave our stitch length at 3, and we're gonna lower our differential feed all the way to the lowest setting. What's our question?
We have some questions about tensions.
Okay.
The numbers, like, so is a smaller number tighter or looser?
Great question. So for tension, and it was something I was going to talk to when we get to the gathering. With our tension, 3 is kind of like that sweet spot. Your machine may be 4. You may have maybe 3.5 right in the middle. You just kind of twist them and move them. But typically, and your machine will come with a manual that will have some examples of settings for different stitches. So you may need to look at that. If you have a Singer machine, a Singer serger, and you need the manual, you can go to singer.com, and all of our manuals are available for virtual, like digital download onto your computer, your phone, your tablet to have and save to reference. But yeah, your tension, the higher the number, the tighter, the lower the number, the looser. Okay. So if you, and I think I had a couple of examples. I'll show you in a minute of if you have your tension too tight or too loose, and this is why it's important to keep the different color threads in there until you figure out exactly the tension settings that you need for your stitch and your fabric. Because if one thread is pulling the other one over, then you know you need to loosen the tension on the one that's pulling it. Usually it's the upper and lower loopers that you need to adjust the most. Okay, does that kind of help answer that question?
Yeah, they just ask if it matters for different garments and projects.
It does. And so when I was talking earlier about the different types of fabrics, you're going to need to adjust your tension a little bit, but honestly, what you're going to adjust the most is probably your differential feed based on the fabric you're using. And this is that example. So we have a really stretchy fabric. I've got it under my foot here. I'm leaving my tension the same. I've got my stitch length still set to 3, and I lowered my differential feed to the lowest setting. For this machine, it's 0.7. And I'm just going to sew through and show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's my little scrap. Can you guys see how this is curling? I'm going to just lay it here. Let's see. Can you guys see how that's wavy? We call that lettucing. It's not pretty. Our threads are looping high. They're not all the way onto the fabric. It's not what we want, okay? So this is a stretchy fabric, and this stitch is not what we need. So because I set the differential feed to the lowest setting, it's the loosest. So we want to tighten this up to work with a stretchy fabric so we don't have this pucker and this wave. That would not sit pretty on our garment, our skirt or whatever. It would not flow and sit pretty. So we want to redo that. We're going to stick this back under there, and I'm going to take my differential feed all the way to 2, the highest setting. And we're going to do the same stitch again. There we go. Scrap. And this time, our stitch is nice and straight. It's nice and smooth. There's no puckers, and it still stretches with the fabric, and it's nice and secure. You guys see how that stitch isn't puckering or lifting at the top? That's the difference in the differential feed. So when I was saying earlier, you don't really need to adjust your tension too much for the type of stitch. You really need to adjust the differential feed based on the fabric. So the stretchier the fabric, you definitely are going to have to play around with that differential feed. The lower the setting, the more puckering and waving you're going to get in those thinner or stretchy fabrics. And if you're doing things like activewear, you definitely are going to want to turn up your differential feed because you don't want that puckering. You're going to want that stretch with your in a nice secure stitch on like activewear. Swimsuit fabric, you're going to want to turn that differential feed up as well. But do you all see that difference, how nice and smooth and straight and how puckered it is? So again, that's just learning the differential feed. Always take a scrap piece of the fabric you're going to be using and set it to the stitch you want, and then you may have to adjust that differential feed to get it to sit really nicely. Okay, are we good with that? Any questions about that?
I think you probably covered it. They just asked what a differential feed does. So
Yeah, so it's just going to help prevent and eliminate puckering, gathering in different types of fabric. So whatever fabric you're using, you're going to have to adjust that. Typically, you're going to have it set in the middle at 1, kind of that neutral zone. But if you were doing something like super stretchy, like this fabric, or like that double brush poly that I used on that tie-dye dress, you're going to need to raise your differential feed so it's nice and smooth instead of getting these, what we call lettucing. It's not cute. It's not pretty at all. And that's not what we want our dress or our garment to look like. We want it to be nice and smooth and flat and lay on the body like we want it to, right? Does that work? And then this is just a tighter stitch, so it's gonna hold up better. This one's like hanging off the edge and not pretty. So, all right, we're ready to move on? Awesome. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna talk about real quick is gathering. So we've done a lot of ruffle projects and gathering projects here with Michaels and Singer over the last few months. And yes, you can gather in one smooth step with a serger machine. So we're going to do that today here on just a printed cotton woven fabric. And just to get started, I'm going to stick my fabric under my foot. And then for my settings, I am going to lower my needle just a little bit, 2.5 to 2, totally kind of up to you on that. Again, you're going to have to kind of play with it with your specific machine. I'm going to leave my upper and lower looper the same. I'm going to leave my differential feed at the highest setting, and I'm going to change my stitch length to the bit longest stitch length it can go. On this machine, it's 4. On some machines, it's 5. And we are going to run this fabric through. And while we're sewing this through, we are going to hold our fingers on the back side. So I'm going to try my best not to get in the way of the camera. And I'm sorry it's so bright right here, but that is how bright the light is on this serger. So that glare is the LED light. And that's really nice, especially when threading the machine, to have that bright light. So let's get to gathering this fabric. And then once we run it through, I'll show you how you can adjust the gathers once you get done. But what's going to be nice is you're going to gather it and finish the edge all at the same time. You're not going to have to run any basting stitches or anything like that. It all does it at once. Again, the whole point of this serger is to make things faster and easier. So let's get to going. And as it gets to the back, I'm going to put my fingers just back here. Not going to hurt you, I promise. And it's just going to hold my fabric there and keep it gathering. There we go. So now I have my gathers, and it's just a slight gather. Do you see that? Just a slight gather. But if I want it to be gathered more, then what I need to do is find my tail. You want to make sure you leave a tail, and you just kind of play with it a little, pull it out, and you're going to have 2 shorter threads. The longer threads are going to be your upper and lower loopers. I'm telling you this because if you have all the same colors, that's how you're going to know the difference. The shorter threads are going to be your needle threads. And in this case, we want to pull our green thread, which is our right needle. But if you're not sure, just tug on one and the other, and one of them will get it. I'm going to find my green thread. If I could separate it from my blue thread. There we go. And as I pull my green thread, I'm able to create some more tighter gathers and just kind of shift them down my fabric here. Just like you would if you were doing it on a sewing machine, but you have a finished edge and it's nice. And you can do it from both sides. So you can gather from both sides, but how nice is that to be able to ruffle and gather? And I'm going to show you a project that my coworker did of a little dress, little t-shirt dress. Again, with that collar, she did it all in one swoop on here. And then she gathered this skirt on the serger as well. And you can see it from the underside, how she gathered it and serged it at the same time. And then she just attached it to her little t-shirt. So how cute is that? So you can gather and then we can attach it directly to the little shirt and make a little t-shirt dress. All on a serger in just a few little steps. So what do we think about the gathering?
They're loving it.
Loving it. Yeah, so a serger isn't just about constructing the garment together on the inside. It's actually adding some really decorative pieces. All right, so you want to move on to something else? What? We got a question? Yeah.
Do the needle or looper threads get used up faster if they're different lengths? So are you going to be changing one versus the other more frequently?
That's a really good question. The question is, do the needle threads or the looper threads run out faster? I'll be honest, I don't know. That might be a question that Amy McMullen might know the answer to, and she can drop it in the chat, but I've never really measured my thread. Like I use the big spools on mine and they're all the same white, and I've never really run through a full spool yet. So I would assume it would be the loopers because of the loops and all of that. It's not just a straight stitch. So I'm assuming it's the loopers, but I don't want to misspeak.
That's correct.
Oh, I'm correct? Okay, good. Any other questions?
Does the gather stretch?
Does the gather stretch? Where did I just place my gather? I just had it. If I throw it over here, do you see it? Maybe it fell on the floor. I was going to stretch it for you, but now I don't know where it ran off to. Well, that's so weird. I don't know where the gather went, but I'll show you on the skirt. Yes, it stretches. So on this skirt, it does stretch. I don't know where my example was that I just did. It probably fell on the floor somewhere. But yes, it will still stretch with your gathers. So if you're making like a skirt, it'll still stretch with that. Any other questions? You doing good? Okay. So now I'm going to show you something really fun with this kind of sheer fabric. Super cute. This is a sample that I'm going to show you. It's called a tube turn. So this is a quick, easy way to make a skinny little, maybe a spaghetti strap or a swimsuit strap, or even a belt loop on some pants. It's hard to turn those narrow little straps and pieces, but you can do it all in one step with a serger. So the first thing you're going to do is we're going to leave our settings here that we used just a minute ago. We're going to change our differential feed back to that 1 in the middle. We're going to change our stitch length back to 3. And before I start sewing, I'm going to need a longer chain than this to be able to do this tube turn. So what you're going to do is just press the foot. So now I have what's called a chain, a nice long chain. This one's extra long, but that's perfect for today's example. And I'm going to take my fabric. It stretches this way, so I'm going to sew it that way, the lengthwise. And I'm going to lay it in between the fabric and fold it in half. Okay, so I'm going to fold my fabric in half. And my chain is running down through this fabric. Can you guys see that? And I want to make sure that I keep my chain along this edge as I sew. Okay. And we're gonna just stick it right under the foot and keep our chain. We don't want to cut our chain. That's what's gonna help us turn this tube. And we're just gonna sew down the opposite side. All right, so now we have our tube that we just sewed. And to turn it right side out, we're just gonna pull on the chain that's down the middle of our tube. Takes a second to get it started at the beginning, but once you get it started, it's quite easy. Here we go. See how it turns it right side out? So that's a quick, easy tip and trick. It's called a tube turn. And you could use this for, like I said, a spaghetti strap shirt, belt loops, swimsuits with those smaller straps with this kind of stretchy fabric. But that's how you can create a tube turn and turn your pieces so much faster and so easy with just a little extra chain. And that's it. So how easy. I see a lot of comments here. That thing makes so much easier. It does make things so much easier. I hope you guys are seeing that in these demonstrations. But I love this. I love this demonstration of turning the little tubes here. All right. So let's move on to the last little thing that we're going to do. And in order to move on to the next one, we're actually going to switch over to camera 3 over here. Awesome. All right. So this one is set up a little differently. This is the same machine, but what we did is we set it up for a rolled hem stitch. So this is going to be a decorative stitch. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what a rolled hem looks like. I'm going to reach in front of the camera real quick, sorry. So this is a decorative rolled hem here. And this is a sneak peek of what we're going to be doing next week. So I'll show you what that is in a minute. Here is a little stemware glass. And we made a little decorative sleeve for the bottom, and we did a rolled hem on that for decoration. So it's nice and secure. So when you use it to take your stemware in and out of the pocket here, it's not going to get worn out and stretched. It's going to be nice and strong, but also very pretty and a nice way to finish this. So these are super cute little squares that you can put on the bottom of your stemware. And then I have something else I'll show you in a minute. But to do this rolled hem, we had to change the settings on our machine. So I'm going to turn it this way a little bit so you guys can see. We have one needle in place here. I'm going to zoom in, see if I can zoom in a little bit. I want you guys to be able to see this better. Sorry, this camera is just a phone, so we have to kind of manually move it here. Okay, so we just have one needle where you're using the right needle for the rolled hem. So we're only using 3 threads. We've eliminated the left needle, so that thread is not in the machine right now. We just have the right needle, the upper and lower. Okay, so everything else is threaded the same. We just took out the blue one, which is the left needle. And we have them, so we're just gonna have 3 threads in our chain down here. For our settings, we're obviously not gonna have to mess with this one. We're not using this one, so you can just leave it at what it is. But for our right needle, we are going to set it to 1.5. For our upper looper, we're setting it to 5. And for our lower looper, we're setting it at 8.5. Again, these may need to be adjusted based on the fabric you're using. And also your machine may just need a little bit different than others. They're all a little different, okay? So just kind of play around with it. We're going to set our differential feed to 1, which is in the middle, which I already have it set to. And our stitch length is going to be at 1. On this machine, it says F, okay? And so you want it the tightest stitch length you can. And we're gonna just stick I'm using just have like a fleecy, stretchy fabric here, but you can do this on just about any kind of fabric. We're gonna just stick that right under here and get a different foot control. And this is a finished decorative rolled hem. And you can adjust this so these are closer together or further apart. You can adjust it so it's wider or more narrow. Get my little Christmas colors going on here. And then I've got my little scrap piece that I just trimmed off a little bit. If you don't want to trim off, you can take the knife and move it up out of the way, or you can just sew right along the edge so it doesn't trim off with the knife blade. Okay, and that applies to any type of stitch. If you don't want to use the knife and have any excess trim off, you don't have to. But if you want to use it, you can, but this is a rolled hem. Here's another example. This is actually a tablecloth that one of my colleagues made. It's actually quilted together by a serger. So she serged all these pieces together. So this is quilting with a serger. How cool is that? All the pieces are put together with her overlock stitch. And then she did a decorative rolled hem all along the edge. And this one is a super tight and narrow rolled hem, very pretty. This is a great decorative piece to use on tablecloths, napkins, placemats, those kind of things. It's really pretty on curtains, home decor. This is on pillows. This is really, really pretty way. So this is just one decorative kind of stitch that you can do on a serger. So I just wanted to show you one real quick because we are going to be using this stitch next in 2 weeks when we do our project together. And our project, we'll go back to the main camera, if that's okay. So I can move this one out of the way. Can you go back to camera 1, Raina? To the yeah, perfect. I'm just gonna move this one out of the way now. So for our project in 2 weeks, we are gonna make these adorable bottle gift bags. These are made with a fleece. And I used a rolled hem, and the whole thing is put together with a serger. We're not using a sewing machine for any of it. It's super quick and easy. Here's one. And then I did another one with a cute little cuff at the top with some little Santas. But I think these are so cute, and they're perfect for gift giving through the holidays and New Year's, or really anytime. You can make these in a variety of colors for birthdays or different events that you go to. But I think these are super sweet. And we're gonna be making these in 2 weeks with our serger. So I'm super excited to teach you all how to do that. What you learned today in today's class will prepare you to make these in that class. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. Any other questions?
What do you do with the tails?
The tails, you can do a couple of things with the tails. I'll show you here. So you can pull it and knot it off and then trim it. Some people will take a needle and thread it back through the stitch to tie it off that way. You can knot it off and then use a little fray check so it doesn't come undone. Typically when you're serging pieces together. So they're going to overlap and tie off themselves together anyways. Or you're going to finish the other end anyway. So that's what I would recommend. Here, I'll show you. I'm going to take this off. This is my little wooden doggy. He's wearing a bandana that I made. And I did a rolled hem on him. I put him down here. And on the rolled hem, what I did is I knotted it off on the ends, and then I did a little fray check so it doesn't come undone. And then on the corners, you just stop right past your fabric. We can show this in the next class, but you'll stop right past your fabric and then turn your fabric and start again. And that way you don't have a tail here that you have to knot or trim off. Does that make sense? I still add a little fray check there because it's a bandana. So, you know, it's going to get wear on it. But yeah, that's something that you can square off. You can square things off with a serger. Does that help answer that question?
I think so.
Okay.
And one question, I've seen a couple of questions about seam ripping.
Seam ripping.
Yes.
Seam ripping serging is not super fun.
Right, yes. So they think maybe there's a trick. So I don't know if you knew that.
If there is a trick. So I don't have a seam ripper here with me, or else I would totally try to seam rip one of these. Honestly, when it comes to seam ripping, one thing that I've learned with a seam ripper is a lot of people want to put the pointy side into the seam, flip it over and put the needle side in. I mean, not the needle side, the little ball point in, because that way it doesn't catch into your fabric and tear your fabric. So you want to use it upside, it sounds upside down, but that's a little trick that I've learned, especially when you're have a tight stitch like this. You're going to want to go in with the ball point side and the pointy side up. That way you don't tear your fabric. When you're seam ripping these, it's gonna be hard because you've got 4 threads going in a lot of directions right here. And you're also going to see all of those stitching when you take it apart. You're going to see all those holes in the fabric. So sometimes it's best to just start that piece over. If you can. If you can't, then take the time to do it. But it is going to be harder to rip a seam out from a serger than just a regular sewing machine. So, but yeah, flip that serger, that seam ripper over and put it in needles, the ball point side down. And that'll help so you don't tear your fabric. Anything else? We good? Guys, I'm so excited about today and introducing you all to sergers. I absolutely love them. I hope you are getting excited about them like I am. If you have one or you're in the market for one, you can get the Singer Pro Finish at Michaels and michaels.com. We are going to be back in 2 weeks. So on Wednesday, December 15th, we will be back here with Michaels for another live class where we're going to make these adorable bottle gift bags using this serger. So some of the techniques we did today, we're going to be using to make these. So we're going to be able to apply what you learned. So watch this a couple times. The replay will be available on Michael's YouTube channel tomorrow and on their website the day after that. So just be looking for that, save it, watch it, take notes, and then come ready to do these with us. They're so fun. Y'all are going to love them. I hope you guys enjoyed this class. If you did, definitely let us know. Use the hashtag Singer Sewing or Michaels classes or Sewing with Michaels. We hope to see you all in 2 weeks before the holidays. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Bethany, and I'll see you later.